Alright, hey Professor, it's Patrick. I spoke to you today after class and told you about what I kind of did. I made a little silly mistake with Daniel putting the PVC pipe behind his back rather than over his head. But I'm making the second part of the video so that I can elaborate more on what Daniel did wrong during the assessment. So during the assessment of the deep squat, I made Daniel do like a practice run for this whole thing for what the video was going to be on. And when he did the overhead squat, he was unable to even put the stick over his head, so I just told him just to put it behind his back, and then when I started the video, I just had him put it behind his back. So I scored him with a 2, considering that he had the pipe behind his back. He did lean excessively forward, but considering that he was unable to even put the pipe over his head, and my mistake for not recording that part, but I gave him a 1 for not even being able to do that. Moving on to the second test, the hurdle step, I gave him a 3. Our setup was kind of little whack. The chairs were a little bit too high, and we used a pull stick for him to step over. So it was just a little bit too high, where he touched his foot, like kind of tapped it, but I didn't penalize him for that, so I gave him a 3, considering that the chairs were just a little bit too high. Moving on to the task 3 for the incline lunge, I gave Daniel a score of 2 because he did not have the 3 points of contact. During the part of the video, you can see that Daniel did not have the stick on his head nor his butt. He kind of was holding it kind of weird, and he did lean excessively forward, so I gave him a 2 for that. For task 4, the back scratch, Daniel was able to touch fingers on both sides for both left and right hands, and that wasn't a problem for him. Moving on to task 4 for the active straight leg raise, Daniel was able to straighten his legs past his mid-thigh. I did put the PVC pipe there so that I could measure how far he was able to go. When he first did it, he did struggle to keep his legs straight because he was kind of slightly bending his knee, but after I reminded him to do so, he fixed it immediately. Task 6, the core stability push-up, where the thumbs are by the forehead and you have to do the push-up. I made him do it 2 times. I did notice that his shoulders slightly rose first, but it was nothing too crazy where the shoulders rose entirely first. It was just very slightly, where it would lift a tad bit, and then everything else came up with it. So I gave him a score of 3 for that. And for the final task of the FMS assessment, the bird dog, I gave Daniel a score of 2. He was unable to bring his arm completely up on the left side, and same with his leg. He wasn't flexible enough to raise both up high enough. He wasn't able to get his left arm above his head nor his right. Same thing with his left and right leg, where he wasn't able to bring it to parallel with his body. And for the core strength portion, for the 30-second sit-up, I gave Daniel a score of 2. He did hold it for 30 seconds. I did notice that his scapula was protracted forward and that his butt was above his lumbar spine. Daniel doesn't really do core at all, so I kind of expected that from him. And for the left and right plank sides, I gave Daniel a score of 3. I only timed it for 15 seconds because I didn't want to have the plank for a whole minute of the video, nor 30 seconds each for both the planks. So I just kind of halved each one. So I gave Daniel a score for the left and right, a score of 3. He did have his butt a little bit too back, but after I cued him to move it forward, he did everything properly. So I gave him a score of 3 on that. And for the isometric sit-up, Daniel, I gave him a score of, I didn't really score that one. Well, considering that his thoracic, he did have thoracic flexion and his head was leaning forward, and he was able to do it, but not for long. He wasn't able to do it for the 15 seconds, so I'd probably give him a score of 1. But considering that he is able to do it, and just with some more core work, he probably could do it. So considering what he did at the time, I'd give him a score of 1 for the isometric sit-up. And that was my assessment of Mr. Daniel. Thank you.